Hey everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of The Daily Leader. I am Taylor Jessup here with my co-host, and we have brought back one of our favorite people, Shane Kuyper, today, who is going to be unpacking a number of different things for us that we're super excited about. Shane, thank you for being here, good sir. Real quick, just before we get in, we always like to give a couple shout outs. So here is to the department, our special cheers. Yay, department. Cheers. Boom. All your podcasting needs. Also, check out Jesus from Video Pilot. April Norris is our sound gal there. She's fantastic. And Ellery May, we thank you for the candles today. So with that, man, Shane, so you've already been on the podcast once. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah.
You didn't hate us too much.
No, it was a blast. I loved it.
You had a good time?
Thanks for having me back.
Brad, I think, had some fun. Did you have any fun, Brad?
I did. I thought it was great.
Yeah. No, Shane, you did you did so well that we were like, man, we've got to have this guy back. Like,
awesome. That
was like my first thought. As we were wrapping up, we just had, like, we didn't have enough time to really get into all the things that we wanted to talk about. Right. So, look, I know last time I done messed up and I started talking about, identity hoops. But I don't think we spent quite as much time on like the healthy competitor, which is a little bit newer for you. But I'm super excited. My company has walked through some of your curriculum with the healthy competitor. I know you're doing it with some other companies. I just love to hear a little bit more. Like, can you just tell us what the healthy competitor is and what you're doing there?
Yeah, thanks. No, you didn't done screw up.
Well, man, I done screw up sometimes.
About IHI and the healthy competitor is that it's the same content.
Yeah.
And so what we've found is that all of this curriculum that we've developed for college basketball coaches and teams, I was unaware of how well it parallels to leaders outside of the basketball world.
That's right.
And I like to even still use basketball language with business leaders.
Yeah.
Because you guys know leaders. I mean, that you can connect dots.
Yeah.
And the sports terminology makes a lot of sense because we are all performers. Coaches are performers, leaders are performers, employees are performers. Yeah. And so a lot of this stuff that we talk about in the healthy competitor is competing from a place of health. Mm-hmm. So if I could know who I am, what I'm doing here, and my why and my values, and compete from a place of health, then everyone around me gets healthy as a result of that.
That's good.
So that's a little bit of the foundation and the start of the healthy competitor. So
yeah, no, that's super solid, man. I know walking through it and you walking our team through it, where I'm currently employed at, was great. And you being able to use, like, I could tell all those basketball, references and different things that would come over, which, by the way, Brad would not get because he's very limited in his sports acumen. No, it all comes across really, really clear. And it is cool that those two translate, right? That, like, healthy doesn't matter the field.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well said.
Being healthy doesn't matter what industry you're in or what you do for a profession, right?
I agree.
This is about getting healthy and how do we help people find health, which, I mean, you guys know, I'm a friggin' hot mess, so I think this is just good for everyone here. So, Brad, you ready to dive in a little bit?
The piece that I feel like in our last conversation we didn't get to focus enough on is this idea of core values. And so I remember when I was 18 years old, I was exposed to this premise of core values for the first time, not only applied to me as a person, as an individual, that I as an individual actually have these deeply held convictions, these core values that whether I say them or don't say them are a leading part of everything that I think and do. And then also I got exposed to them in the business world in that context for the first time. So I would love for you to just walk us through why are core values so important? And then as a follow-up to that, what do we need to do in order to begin the process of creating them?
Wow. I wish I would have been exposed to core values when I was 18 years old. That's pretty cool. And I think rare.
Yeah.
Because you're really old. So that was a long time ago.
You're so old, man.
Yeah. It's only been in the last 3-4 years for me that I even was aware that identified.
I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, you'll probably never get caught up at this rate to those of us who got such a head start, but I'm sure you'll be successful in some ways.
So our young listeners are fine. The older the listener gets, the more SOL they are.
That's a good way to say that.
Okay, good. Just checking.
I like to think of trajectory a little bit differently than you did.
in a little bit healthier
Whatever
way.
makes you feel better,
Mine's
Shane.
a little steeper than yours. Right. You're cruising.
Yeah, I'm kind of a slow burn.
Me and
Whatever-
Taylor, we're very
whatever you do, Brad kind of sets the bar, and then we're all down here trying to
Yeah,
just play
we're
catch up to Brad. That's good. That's good.
Me, meow. You, meow. Did you guys not watch South Park?
Man, I wasn't a big South Park guy.
I wasn't allowed to watch it when I was a kid.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
But
So,
my older brother made me.
wait, what?
Yeah. Yep.
That's trauma. Right?
Yeah. Maybe we can talk about that with
Forced
the cameras
you
off later.
to watch South Park. That's fantastic.
We're not going to be able to step into health.
Yeah. Speaking of core values, we're going to talk about Brad and how his core values stem from South Park. So,
We're forced to watch.
Shane, can you tell us more about core values, man?
Yeah.
Let's go with
Thanks for
your
saving
ideas.
the
maybe.
conversation.
Yeah.
Man, core values for me have been a game changer. So some things that I'll touch on briefly and then we'll go into depth is that core values have everything to do with, you said it briefly, like convictions, like this standard that I'm holding myself to.
Yeah.
So I know right now what my top core value is, what my number 2, and what my number 3 are. And then I kind of have some that I plug and play. So one of the things we'll talk about is like, there's no pressure in identifying your core values because you're growing and you're changing. And so your core values will grow and change too. Okay. So
Okay, so
people
I wanna
get core
interject
values
here.
wrong when they say they need to be the same for 100 years.
That's exactly what I'll lean into, because what I've heard before, and maybe when we go back to some of that early training I had, it was, hey, these are fixed.
Yeah.
You know, these are non-negotiables
Yeah.
is the word that gets used in reference to core values, right? But from what you're saying, Shane, that's not really true to experience, is it?
No, and I can understand the frame of reference of the fixed mindset in that, like, because there are things that I think that are just always true about me and in my design, but that doesn't mean that honesty is not a core value, or not a value of mine if it's not in my top 3. But the more that I grow and change, I'm finding things that are true about myself that I didn't know. We talked about that in the last one. And so as I grow and mature, and I'll share my core values too, like I'm at my best when I'm making the decision based on this value. And maybe I'm just kind of at my average self when I'm making decisions based on this value. It doesn't mean it's not true. It's just not highly ranked Okay? So let's see. Here's another 30,000 foot when we talk about values is that it's a decision-making process. So every decision that I make either moves me toward who I want to be next or away. There's no middle ground. And that's what I love. And it's so deep and exciting and scary about values is me drinking this, parking, yelling at my kids, making a decision to invest in this business or that, that's either moving me toward my values or away. Okay, so values is who I want to be next.
So last night when I was getting into the kettle chips, I was making a values decision.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's really good.
What was the value decision?
Well, have you had the air finished kettle chips?
No.
I couldn't explain it to you then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't understand.
Yeah. I've experienced that from Sprouts. You get them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The salt and vinegar one. Yeah. And so here, like my number one value, and this has been for the whole time that I've been trained and researching and walking other people through identifying their values, is health. It's my number one value. And so when I think about health, the physical part of it is only 1/4 of it. So, but my physical health does matter. So eating that late at night, that would be an away move. Okay. That would be an away move.
And just to clarify that a little bit, when you're making an away move,
Yeah.
when you're choosing an away decision,
Yeah.
are you thinking that verbiage in your mind, and are you using that verbiage to catch yourself in the midst of that behavior, saying, oh, this is an away move, I should probably stop this, and kind of turn around and go?
Yeah. And that's where
towards
the word conviction, because like when I think about conviction, it's not necessarily like who I want to be. It's like, who I don't want to be. convictions are like the not side of it. Like, no,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that, or that's not a good decision. So here's a funny story. Like, I told Coley, my wife, that I don't want to drink sugar anymore. Just a random
Drink sugar.
Good
Yeah.
for you, Shane.
Okay, good.
yeah.
I don't either.
Yeah. So sodas, like whatever, mixers, like things like this. I just was like, yeah, that's probably a way that I could have healthier teeth and healthier, like, I play pickleball a lot, and so I could probably get better at pickleball if I stopped drinking sugar. That would be a toward move for me, like, just to be healthier. My top value is health. I was at Sam's Club 2 days after I told Coley that I want to stop drinking sugar, and I saw they got a new white mocha creamer for your coffee. And I bought it, and then I drank it, and then I told Coley, like, that same morning she was surprised, and I said, look, this is an away move. As I was,
So you knew.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it.
Yeah.
And it took 2 of them, and it was like it tasted good. And I was like, no, like, this is not who I want to be. This is not healthy. So I'm not doing it anymore. So it's a really expensive
that.
2 cups of coffee.
Sure.
It's like the Sam's Club creamer.
Yeah.
It's like a vat of white chocolate mocha sauce.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
Yeah, no, I mean, if you want to swap, you can get, offload that to me later today.
Okay.
Just swing by the house and pick that up. That sounds,
Yeah.
sounds fantastic.
So I have the physical part of that value. Even higher regard is the emotional health for me. So, like, I have this checklist. Like, there's 4 things, like the emotional, like, how am I doing emotionally? And there are lots of things that I can do towards emotional health. Relational, I'm such a relational guy. So if my relationships aren't healthy, I'm not at my best. And so avoiding conflict is a huge away move for me.
That's good.
And then there's the spiritual part of it. So it's the relational, the emotional, the physical, and the spiritual health. That's my top core value. And so as we identify values, you have these descriptors of them. And one of the things that's helpful is like an outcome statement. So like an outcome statement, if you were to live into this value of health, what would it look like? And for me, those 4 things would be thriving, those 4 areas. My number 2 value is this word called mastery. And this one I've actually moved up. It used to be not even be on the list, but this idea of like getting dialed in with content for my clients.
Yeah.
Like that's it's a huge part of my juice. I get up in the mornings like, what could I learn today that I could offer, that I could grow myself, get healthy myself, and then offer it to somebody else. And then golf ticks that, like getting really good at golf, getting really good at pickleball. These are things like parenting, relational dynamics. So mastery, like getting really, really good at something. Like the art of mastering something is
That's great.
my number 2
Which
value.
you don't know, and you're not a sports guy, but Shane is one heck of a golfer because I've golfed with him consistently. I don't think I've ever come close to winning, and he's picked up pickleball. I think he's like number 5 in the world. He's probably not that good, but he has gotten pretty good pretty fast. Like so all of that is to say that when he says mastery, like I know that he means that because I can I watch those wheels turning. Like I can tell that your values of health is one and mastery is 2, even though that's coming up next. Anyways, brief interjection.
Yeah.
Continue.
Well, just to add to that, that reminds me of the time that you gave me a golf lesson,
oh gosh.
which was probably not a shining moment for you and was certainly not a shining moment for me.
Everybody at the clubhouse was worried for the safety of everyone around.
I actually went out and bought a special pair of shorts for that golf lesson.
Yeah, you did.
I'll have you know.
Yeah.
And I've never worn them again.
No, that's fine. Yeah. One time only.
That's a toward
You give me the mocha and
special
I'll give
shorts
you
for golf.
Yeah.
the shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He made a healthy move. I said, hey, let's do this. We need to, meet with clients, go golfing. So far, that dream.
Most people would buy like a glove or shoes or a golf club.
Shorts.
Nah, Brad's
I
going for
needed
the
some-
Bermudas.
I needed some shorts.
Were they cargo shorts?
No.
Okay.
No, they were nice
So-
golf shorts.
All right. So
I'm sorry.
what's your third? What's your third?
Yeah, so I'm at my best when I'm getting really good at something.
Yeah.
So that mastery is number 3 for me is still like I have this like fear of saying it, which is real interesting. I'm curious where this is coming from. It's playfulness. So when I'm at play, then people get to experience the healthy Shane Kuyper.
That's good.
So I'm really, really struggle to be who I want to be when I'm bored. My mom would say that about me since I was, I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, like the adventure, the playfulness, the goofiness. My kids get to experience that when I'm at my best. So even in business, like there's a playfulness to what we're doing. Even this conversation, like there's an aspect of like, this is fun. Like let's have fun.
We really get that wrong. One of the strongest aspects of what I took away from the Chick-fil-A culture is kind of this quote by Truett Cathy, the founder of Chick-fil-A, where he talks about, you have to do a lot of work, so it might as well be fun. And you walk into any Chick-fil-A across the country, and one of the key reasons why those units are performing at double, triple, quadruple, and even more than average fast food or QSR numbers is because they have a culture of fun that is distinctive. It's as a rule across all those businesses. There's a lot of fun being had in those businesses. There are happy people enjoying their work. And so I've really tried to carry that with me through the rest of my professional experience. And I agree that, the truth you don't know will kill you. And if you don't recognize how important having fun is, no matter what you're doing, you will become a sad person very quickly. Yeah. Because you're not being intentional about staying in this play space. Yeah. So that resonates with me so much, both as a person, but also as someone developing leaders. It's actually something that I focus on with my clients. Where are you finding joy in your life right now, and how do we do more of that in order to see you perform better?
Wow. Well said.
Really, really good.
It's good, bro.
Well said.
Yeah, life's too short not to have a good time.
Totally.
Like, this is super simple and like oversimplification, but like, man, if you're going to do it, auctioneering school was the place where our which if you don't know, I went to auctioneering school back in the day, but there's the 2 things that he said we're going to do is, hey, work hard and have fun. Right. And I think that those 2 go really well together. And Shane's a good player. You're a good player. Like people that play and that have fun while they're working hard, you can't necessarily just say, hey, I'm not going to work hard. I'm just going to play, like in the business setting, I think. But I think that's more attractive. I think people will follow that person more if they're having a good time. They found a way to bring joy.
And I think that accountability is different in cultures of fun and play and joy and humor. When you incorporate accountability into a culture that has some notion and practice of play, accountability stops being this heavy, dark, depressing thing, and it becomes about improvement and about team and about what you can contribute and how you can contribute 1% more rather than all the things that you're doing wrong. And so when I've seen the healthiest cultures in my work experience, it's been because accountability was in a context of fun, play, humor, joy. And it wasn't just a cracking the whip, more, faster, better. It was really about what can we accomplish as a team and how can we each play a role in that. Totally sets a different trajectory for accountability.
Yeah. Wow.
So interesting that you were feeling fearful about talking about something that resonates so deeply with us and we know will resonate with our listeners as well.
Yeah. See, and now I feel known, seen, understood.
Yeah.
And I like you better. Man, isn't that great?
Yeah, because there's like I'm 36 years old talking about like how one of the top like most important things is play. Like it just feels childish, Yeah. So
well, to that point, my wife sent me a stat. Now it was on Instagram, so it's veracity. Who knows? Probably not true at all, but nonetheless,
you're about to say it anyway.
I'm going to say it anyway, and I'm believing it. That particularly fathers and their children connect around play.
Oh man.
That it is the number one that a father will connect, it is the number one way that a father will connect with their child is through play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a different model than how it works with mothers. They connect differently with their mothers. And so I think that there's really something to that gets down to the fabric of who we are as people. There's a kind of a nature of humans, and play is just a intrinsic part of who we are. So
love it.
Pretty powerful stuff.
So that's my number 1, 2, and 3. And so I really do, like, when I'm operating in health and I have a decision to make, Shane, will you come be a guest on our podcast? Like, when I'm operating in health, I will podcast number 1 value, 2, 3. And then if I can't make a decision after number 3, then like I have to reach out to help. But it's a decision-making process. Our values are, and businesses should make decisions based on their values as well.
What is the alternative to values-based decisions?
Emotions.
And what does that look like?
Making a decision based on how I feel. So here's one of the coolest things that resonates, and I think this will resonate with everybody. When I make a decision based on my emotions, on how I feel, it has a short-term gain every time. Every time. I feel like I want to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to drink that white chocolate mocha. It feels good, right?
Kettle chips. Come on. Air finished.
It, like, making a decision based on emotions, it delivers on its promise every time. The problem is that right after that, there's long-term pain. Short-term gain, long-term pain. Every time I make a decision based on emotions. Feels good. Something good happens in the immediate, in the finite. Something really bad happens in the infinite, in the long term.
Yeah.
Short-term gain, long-term pain. Every time I make a decision based on my values, who I want to be next, the standard that I'm holding myself to, there's short-term pain. There's growth, right? There's short-term pain. Something hurts. Something is stretching me, making me feel uncomfortable. But every time I make a decision based on values, there's long-term gain. Short-term pain, long-term gain. So every time I make a decision, I go one of 2 ways. Long-term, has implications on both sides of that.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I like that. I mean, I hate that, but I like it. Like that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it makes perfect sense. You know, for me, when I'm giving into emotional decisions, it is those like, oh yes, okay, fine, and then you're right. Like, rarely does that like emotional choice net me anything in the long term.
Yeah.
No. Maybe sometimes,
Sure.
maybe there are times when my emotions are going to line up with truth, right?
Absolutely.
But oftentimes I treat my emotions as if they are truth, and emotions are not truth; they're just indicators.
Whoa, well said.
Right?
Yeah.
So if an emotion is an indicator, then I have to ask myself, is that true? And it seems like the best way to do that would be go back to my core values and say, hey, okay, if I am to make this choice emotionally, does it line up with my core values?
Yeah.
If it does, then okay. Then that emotional choice can be okay.
Yeah.
Most of the time for me, those emotional choices are like spur of the moment.
Yeah.
Right? It's quick. It's, hey, I'm in Costco. Oh, man, I'm getting this.
Yeah.
Right?
Sam's
and then,
Club.
yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You get your Sam's Club people.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. That's good.
Yeah, I like androids and Sam's Club.
That makes so much sense right now. That makes so much sense. The side of the table.
1%.
The side of the table is Costco
To our
and iPhone.
listeners, please enjoy this podcast with Shane.
apologize.
This is going to be the last one we do.
We literally just lost like 1,000 Instagram subscribers right there. Just
unfollow,
and we also
dislike,
gained a whole bunch more.
unsubscribe.
The whole
mark as
podcast is
spam.
gone now. Nobody's going to get core values. They're
Inappropriate
just gonna
content.
We just started a battle. And the battle is Apple and Costco versus Android and Walmart. Sam's Club.
Yeah.
Same people, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
But man, no, I think that's really good. And it's a good tool, good framework for me, right? Because then you can really quickly apply. You can really quickly apply, okay, all these decisions that I'm making, are they lining up with the me that I want to be or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know my My ability to index into making emotional decisions that feel good is like the resistance there is so much less. Like the resistance to making the good choices that are going to be long lasting, like that's like swimming up a river, but it's important because that's the only way you grow.
Super important.
Right. That's when the muscle stretches and tears and it
Yeah.
hurts
Yeah.
and you go from there. But
It's interesting because we keep talking about this idea of core values in terms of movement. And one of the things I've heard you say before, Shane, is that, core values really, they kind of function like a compass.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that compass idea and how it relates to core values? Because I think it's a great illustration for what we're talking about.
Yeah. So like in basketball, we would come up with a game. So here's the compass is a tool, like the values driven way. We do like links and show notes or anything like that?
Oh yeah.
yeah, sure.
So
Big time.
we can put the values driven way, values versus emotions driven way.
Yeah.
So you guys can.
If you have a
actually
good
see.
diagram, we can drop it into the actual recording, the video.
right
Okay.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you make it appear?
Yeah.
Can Jesus do that? That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Stretch it out.
And so
Okay,
like
all right, there we
you'll be able to see like there's a lighthouse, and then there's a decision that we need to make, and we can either stay on the values driven way or we can go to the emotions driven way. So this is the compass, right?
Yep.
So we're letting our values be our roadmap, okay? And also, this is another cool conversation. Like in business or in coaching, like if you're a coach of a basketball team, your values need to be the bad guy, not you. Right? Like a lot of coaching thinks like, oh, I got the good cop, bad cop type of relationship, assistant coaches, or in business, it's the same way. Like I got to be an a-hole. Do we cuss on the podcast?
We try not to, but Taylor
Okay.
always does. Jesus fixes it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's like this passed down leadership style of like the head honcho is the bad guy. Like, are there other honchos, or is there just the head?
No, I think there's just the head. There's,
Yeah.
there's not the sub
Bro,
head
I've
honcho.
never heard of a non-honcho.
Like
Yeah.
the assistant
Yeah.
head honcho.
There's no like peasant honcho or the lower employee honcho.
Coley follows someone on Instagram. I can't. It's a singer. He like made a song about that. Like, are there other honchos, or is it just the head honcho?
I think it's just the head honcho. It's just-
my brain is okay. So yeah, your values, your top 3 core values have to be the bad guy. So it's the boundaries. Like, let those be and parenting
right.
too. Like your parenting value. Like if kindness is one of your parenting values, and kid is not being kind, let that be the bad guy.
so why?
That's really good.
So why let that, like, why is it so important for us in business and coaches and as parents to let the value be the bad guy rather than us being the bad guy?
Yeah, because if my emotions are the bad guy, or if I'm just gonna lay into you, or if I'm gonna tell you as a parent, like, just go away, time out, when the child actually needs me more than ever, right? But so if I can connect and understand the decision, so on a basketball team, like, hey, like we got to learn how to ask curious questions instead of leading questions that just get behavior modification. So what I'm thinking about based on what your question, why let my values be the bad guy, is because then it allows for relational health. It allows for me to connect with you, to say, hey, what you're experiencing is true, but what we've decided as a family is that this is what matters most, and it seems like you're not able to do that right now, and so we're going to take some time, and then when you're able to re-enter back in, you're welcome to come join us. So like that's so I'm staying at a place where I'm in my window, like where I'm at my optimal state.
Yeah.
And the values is the bad guy. So dad's not sending me to timeout. Like, it's because of my value of kindness that I'm having to go take some time away.
Yeah.
That's really good. In business, I think one of the biggest problems I observe over and over again is that a lack of core values. I was actually talking to a client about this yesterday on a car ride. There's no values, and so therefore accountability becomes completely arbitrary.
Huh.
And in the case that you're describing, it's based on emotions.
Yeah.
Someone didn't do something or did do something. There was a emotion that took place as a result,
Yeah.
and then a reaction, and what was it aligned to? A shared belief? Because if it were a shared belief, it totally changes the conversation. So, in our business, relationships is a core value, right? We really, really celebrate and build around relationships through pattern talent.
Wow.
And so that's our second core value.
Yeah.
So if something is not relational, if I have to do something alone, I'm asking myself, why have I not included another person in this process with me? Why is it more aligned for me to do this by myself than it is to do this with a partner?
Yeah.
And oftentimes the answer, it comes down to money. And in which case we say, well, is there a way to generate more revenue to help cover more involvement with other perspectives and people and time, right? So that's just an example how, I have to hold myself accountable to a core value that oftentimes financially doesn't make sense on the surface.
Yeah.
So let me see if this plays. I don't know if it plays or not, to connect some of these dots that I'm thinking in my head.
Yeah.
Just to extract it of like what I'm thinking is the reason we want that to essentially be the bad guy is you can invite that person, that employee, your spouse, whoever it is, towards you, and then use the core values as kind of like your compass, right?
Yeah.
So rather than like, hey, we've got this conflict and we're going to get in a fight about it, you can invite them towards you by kind of deflating it, making it be about like, hey, I still want to be close with you, but like, hey, let's look at our core values that we've set up as a company and go, does that line up? That way our relationship, right? I heard, who was it? Stanley said like, man, I always want to be in right relationship over being right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important as a leader. I think we could go on a big debate on that, even in terms of business, but I think that it actually is important. It sounds like that the compass of your core values, like that, does that play?
Absolutely.
That like, hey, I can invite people towards me and then together we can kind of like do the analysis. Does this take us towards our core values or away from them?
Yeah. And I'm inviting and I'm also moving towards with a curious like mindset of like trying to understand.
Yeah.
And saying things like, hey, like help me understand. Like that's a great way to start a sentence when there's something gone wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Help me understand. Or where it's like when I move towards you, then I'm saying like I have to consider that the truth that they're experiencing is also true as well as mine. So multiplicity is the term there. Like both are true.
Yeah.
What you're experiencing is true, and what I'm experiencing is true. And so the opposite of multiplicity would be convincing. If I move towards you trying to convince you, even if it's trying to convince you of like acting in line of the core value, like convincing leads to the opposite of what we want. It's the opposite of understanding.
It's so counterintuitive. And it's hard. It's hard for me to accept what you're saying right now, right? Because when I'm convinced
you're right,
that I'm right about something and that there's moral implication, like we're not just talking about how someone feels or what flavor of ice cream, or whether or not they enjoyed a piece of art or song or movie. We're talking about something that I feel like might be in moral violation of my relationship or a standard that we hold.
Yeah.
And that can be so emotionally charged.
Yeah.
So for me to look at someone and say, hey, you know what, from your perspective, I see why you believe what you believe.
Yeah.
Let's move towards one another and let's move towards this core value together that there was a point in time we agreed was more important than our emotions, was more important than, a transitory perspective about something, and was going to be this thing that we rally around.
Yeah.
It's difficult to believe you're right.
Yeah.
And to move towards someone who you believe is wrong.
Yeah.
Well said.
It's so
what you
difficult.
just described would make me trust you as a leader or as a coach. Like if you're moving towards me in a transformational way, but 90 whatever percent of basketball coaches, business leaders, it's transactional.
Totally.
I'm going to convince you I'm right because of the bottom line.
Yeah.
And if you don't perform the way that I want you to, there's a seat on the bench.
Sure.
next to me.
Sure. So I'm curious how we help leaders actually move one step forward in this process.
Yeah.
How do we actually begin to help leaders create core values? A funny conversation we've had before, the daily leader, we've got 4 core values. You prefer for there to be 3.
Yeah.
And have some great ideas around why that's so important.
Shane's just wrong. He's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not curious
We're gonna
about
move.
why he thinks
We're gonna move towards you, but you're wrong. So help us like begin the process. Like, how do I even start that
Yeah.
as a leader? And then maybe if we have time, I would love for us to kind of workshop, what core value we need to cut out from your perspective.
Yeah.
There we go.
The 3, the science of 3, I think is Jim Collins. It was the book Good, Not Great, or Great, Not
Good to great.
Good to Great.
Yeah.
He says if you have 4 priorities, you have none.
Yeah.
So it's priorities, values, like there's a little bit of gray area there. So the guy that trained me in acceptance and commitment training, which is values are a huge part of that type of, if you're a therapist, you call it acceptance and commitment therapy. If you're not a therapist, it's acceptance and commitment training. So you have to know what and who matters to you in order to have any shot of being who I want to be next. And so that's the data behind it, is like,
That's great.
in the decision-making process, if I start getting into my 4th and 5th, it's just, one, it's not efficient. And then we can get some blurred boundaries. We can get a little blurry. So I really like 3. It feels horrible, like for me, to not have authenticity in my top 3, or like a word like adventure. Like that's been in my top 3 before. So the thought of like nixing some of these words that are important to all of us, it's really hard work.
Right.
It is so important though to identify the top 3 things of how I want to make decisions. So it's not like a hard line where you have to have 3. Like we can work with people that can't get it down to 3. They have 4, 5 tops. I think everyone would agree about that. And then like, yeah, so that's the why I really like 3.
And then when you're working with a client to actually establish core values, how do you start them on that journey?
Well, we can put this document on underneath or below or here or whatever.
Sorry, podcasters.
You can start. There's tons of resources out there. There's lists of words, values, words. And so what I like to do is like, hey, just look at this list and circle every single one that resonates with you. If you like the word, circle it. We're not even thinking about yourself yet. Circle it. Go back through a second time. Try to underline 10, okay? And then 8 to 10, now we're starting to get dialed in. Then the really hard work, this could take a long time. Some people can do it really fast, where you're gonna write down 3 and then you're gonna rank them of those ones that you underlined. So now we've identified words. If you're still struggling to do that, there's an exercise that I really like to do with clients or basketball coaches, anyone, where it's you attend your own funeral. Attend your own funeral, and what are people saying about you? Mm-hmm. What descriptive words are people saying about you? Because again, the decisions you make, whether you've identified your values or not, like in health, when you've operated in health, you've made decisions based on what matters to you. And so think about what they're saying about you and start to write those words down. And now we're probably getting honed in, dialed in on your top core values. There's a couple other things that we can do, but those are my go-to when I help people identify their core values. Same thing with businesses.
That's a great start.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really good. So, all right. So, man, I'm trying to decide, Brad, do we workshop our 4 or do we, because like we have plenty more questions. I know, like, I don't know, which direction you want to go here?
I want to hear them. I want to hear what your top 3 are.
You want to hear our top 3?
Well, we have 4.
We do, which is the problem. Do you want to read them off, Brad?
I got them.
Go for it.
We said first and foremost was going to be curiosity, right? And that was really something that was very important to you.
Yeah.
That in the way that we, number 1, go about our business, we do it from a place of curiosity, and number 2, the way in which we approach our guests and our listeners, we demonstrate that value.
Yeah.
So it's not about Taylor and I bringing someone on our podcast to tell them what they should think. It's about us asking great questions so that both Taylor and I and our listeners can understand what they think.
Yeah.
Number 2 is community. And that was a big piece that resonated with me because relationships are so important to me. So if we're doing something alone, we need to ask ourselves the question, why are we not inviting others into this with us? And especially if the answer is financial, we know we have a really, really big problem, because anytime that I can increase my time, I can increase my revenue. Anytime that I can increase my time, I can increase my revenue. And so there might be some who are really productivity oriented or efficiency oriented, and that principle is difficult for them to understand. But the more that you think about it, the more that you think about the relationship between time and money, you recognize that if you can increase your time, you can always increase your money. And in the common thinking, the business world is that labor is bad. Labor is an expense instead of an opportunity to generate more. Right? Instead of an opportunity for abundance, we apply a scarcity way of thinking to time and to labor. So something I'm really convicted about there. Number 3 is this idea of competence, which relates to your idea of mastery. That we want to be very good at what we're doing. We care deeply about excellence, and not only how we do what we do, but how we encourage others to lead. There's an idea of mastery and of excellence that relates to the skill set of leading. And then lastly, clarity. We want people to walk away from these conversations with increased clarity around what leadership is and how it works. And that might not mean that we answer every question they have. That might not mean that we don't leave them with more questions than answers as a result of certain episodes. But surely the questions would at least be leading them into a deeper level of clarity rather than more ambiguity and confusion. Because so much of the reason why we do this podcast is because of the prevalence of bad leadership. And we believe that bad leadership is actually detrimental to individuals, families, businesses, societies, and is really the number one problem that each of us need to think about addressing as we go about our day-to-day lives. And so curiosity, community, competence, and clarity. How we got the C's, I don't know. But what would you change? What would you fix?
Fantastic.
What questions would you ask? Really coach us up on that process.
No, it sounds like you guys did great work. And
Please try to convince us of something.
The cool part, so here's a sentence that I've been working on. It's the primary role of a leader to create the conditions where the personal values connect to the organizational values. And so my question for you guys would be like, the top 2 for sure, you had your top, and do your core values of the daily leader, is there an avenue, a direct line where you can connect? This is why I love doing this, because it's my personal value, and my personal value adds value to the organizational value. So it's like,
So do my values kind of line up with what we're trying to do, essentially? Yeah.
Are like the policies, is the climate, is the culture in place so far where you feel valued because your value connects to the organizational value?
So your suggestion is that there has to be alignment between an organization's core values and the people that make up that organization who do the work of the company.
Yeah, like have you ever worked in a job where you're just like, no, this isn't a fit?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you about the company and the leader by name if I can too.
Yeah, you could.
Just kidding.
But I would be curious if the conditions were different, if the problem was the job, or if the problem was that the leader didn't do a good job creating the conditions where
that's right.
your values can connect to the organization's values.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the organization's values even were?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do, and some of them were really, really good. But to your point, there's a difference between stated values and how those values get celebrated, executed, how accountability is delivered around core values, right? And so I think a lot of times the problem isn't, that we've not written out wonderful core values for ourselves or for our organizations. It's that the conditions around those core values, the policies, the procedures, our way of being and doing in the company is totally fractured from what those core values actually are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard it said back in my business school, I'm sure she's not the only one, but the head of the dean said like, hey, they've said a good idea is worth $1 million. And she said, that's bull. I won't go on because you guys don't need me to swear again. But she said, it's the execution of a good idea that's actually worth it. Right. And I think what I hear so often is like, hey, we have these core values, but the execution of how do those core values actually connect with our employees? Like how do they actually, like, with their personal lives and the way that they make decisions? That's one of the biggest disconnects that I see. So I think a lot of companies have core values, but are those core values actually the compass that's helping lead the company? Because typically the story that I make up and what I've seen a lot of times is, we've got core values. But do they affect us on a daily level? Do they affect us in the way we're thinking and processing and working and doing all those kind of things? Yeah. To where like, cool, my employees not only can just like recite them, but they're like, man, I align. Yeah. Like we're lined up, right? And that takes that's like an extra step or a lot of extra steps to help get your team there. That's some pretty deep work in leadership to start going, okay, if we value curiosity, how do we make sure? No, Brad and I are like, this is the two of us, and Jesus and like people that are like coming in around us, right? So, but to do that at scale, it's harder and harder, man. So anyway, I know we're kind of wrapping up here.
It's so good, Taylor. It's so good. And I think there's a disconnect. So we have a connection problem as leaders. Yeah. We don't know how to connect. And this is an amazing way to get started. If you're leading a team or a part of a team where you know that there's a need for connection, start with core values. Yeah. If you don't know your employees' core values, their personal ones, right, then you're not doing your primary role. Your primary role is to be able to connect his or her what matters to them most to what matters most to the organization. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you that if you know their core values, they're going to feel seen, understood, known, and they're gonna participate at a higher level. Yeah. Yeah, the byproduct of that, right, is actually you may get better performance than you ever thought. They're going to show up way different. Yeah. They're going to show up way different. Yeah. No, I love that.
So this is something you do for companies, you do for organizations, education, across lots of different industries. You've got lots of different clients you're working with. I did
this with a professional golfer, and it was a game changer for him. It changed his life, identifying his core values. And he actually thinks about his core values before he hits a bunker shot.
I love that.
Choosing a club off the tee. It's amazing.
That's like great.
It's actually made him a better competitor, healthier competitor.
Yeah, that's right. And so if people want to learn more about you, the healthy competitor, and how they can create their own core values, how do they find you?
Again, my home address.
Yeah, you can just show up at Shane's house anytime. And the funny thing is, he tells me after the last time, because he said this last time, he's like, yeah, I'm pretty serious about that.
I actually think it would be so cool. I saw you on a podcast.
I just thought I'd swing by.
Yeah, I came to 123 Main Street, Shane.
Shane's physical address will be in the show notes, guys. But for those of you who maybe live in another country, like Australia or something like that, how can they find you on the internet?
Thehealthycompetitor.com.
Yeah. Beautiful.
We're on Instagram, and I would love to connect with you on the email level.
On the email. Thing? Yeah, and in our show notes. They'll be in our show notes for sure.
Yeah. So. Shane, thank you so much for coming back, man. We'll have you back again sooner rather than later.
Let's do it.
Because we've got so many great topics we want to talk about. Yeah. And I think you add so much value. So
thanks, man. I appreciate you guys. Big fan of what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Hey.
So
Thanks, Shane. Great to have you on, man.
Yep.
Until next time then, hey, if you like this episode, we hope that you would go ahead, take a minute, like or subscribe, and we'll see you next time.